The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
You've done a lot of diving and, you do a lot of fishing. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned at all about mercury levels in fish? And
Yeah. I think that, if I had a diet of exclusively bluefin tuna, I'm certain I'd get, mercury poisoning, foggy headed, all the things that come from that. But as long as you're varying it, and you're not, I think being pescatarian with wild apex fish, there's certain choices, right? Certain fish have much lower mercury levels than others.
And it's the apex ones, the ones that are the predators, they're the ones who get the higher fish content or the higher mercury content because they're eating all these other fish that spend a lot of time in the depths of the ocean where the heavy metal poisoning is. Is that the idea?
That's part of it. It's really just the bioaccumulation. So every fish has the same amount. This is very vague, but every fish has the same amount of mercury. But if you're a fish at the top of the food chain and you eat 1,000 small fish, that's all that mercury is accumulating because it doesn't dissipate. Versus if you're a fish lower down in the food chain, like a sardine, that's just eating microorganisms and algae. It's not accumulating a lot of mercury.
It's interesting you say that because I tested positive for arsenic from sardines.
Really?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I got a blood test, and my doctor was like, "You got arsenic in your blood." And I was like, "What?"
That's terrible.
Yeah, and he goes, "It's not a lot." He goes, "It's a very small amount." He goes, "But what are you eating?" And he goes, "Are you eating any sardines?" I go, "Yeah, I eat a lot. I eat 3 cans a day." I was eating a lot of sardines.
That is a lot.
Young and single and stupid.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't do that." He said, "Let's do it again in a couple of months. Just cut that out of your diet." I cut it out of my diet, went back, nothing.
What, do you know how the arsenic is in sardines? I
Just heavy metal toxins.
That.
They spend a lot of time in the low depths of the ocean where a lot of that stuff accumulates, apparently.
Yeah. And all the radiation is more, So there was a lot of, concern about our eastern bluefin tuna population, right? There's a population of bluefin tuna that basically just swim between Central America, us in California, Northern America, and over to Japan and back. They just do this big circle every year. And there's a lot of concern that when they're going over to Japan from Hiroshima and things like that, they're picking up a lot of radiation, and that's actually activating the mercury, right? And,
really?
Yeah, so there's been published studies on this, and I don't know exactly how much it's affected in those fish, but the fish going over there undeniably have higher amounts of mercury than the fish over on the west coast of the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the radiation activates the mercury.
Yeah, there's been some, I don't understand how it's connected, but yeah.
How much time is there left in the ocean for these fish? If you think about how quickly, we want to talk about how we wiped out woolly mammoths and we wiped out bison. We are wiping out fish at a fucking staggering rate.
An alarming rate, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, before we talk about how much time is left, scientists predict that 8 years is all it would take to bring it back to 100%, or maybe it was 98%.
What?
If we stopped fishing the ocean for 8 years, it would be back to nearly 100% fecundancy, 100% perfect, nearly.
But we'd have to get all the countries on board.
Yeah,
That means
it's
for
impossible.
8 years, all the fishermen would starve.
And not to mention, fish is the primary source of protein for the majority of the planet.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
The majority of the planet?
Yeah, that's certainly everywhere coastal. But the majority of the planet's majority of protein comes from fish.
Wow.
Yeah, which is why, and we are wiping out, it's 100 million sharks a year we're killing. Just sharks, 100 million a year. Just think about that. That is so many animals.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so, are the oceans fucked? My short answer is no, because I don't like to think in that doom and gloom. I think that we have the ability and the knowledge to overcome it. We just have to figure out how we're going to do that. I think if we continue at the rate that we're doing it, we're going to see a big collapse. And by the way, people seem to forget about this. If we lose the ocean, we all die. It's the biggest carbon neutralizer. It gives us all of our protein. There's a million reasons why the ocean, it's where all our rain comes from. Everything is connected to the ocean. And if we fuck that up completely, we're gone. Yeah. And yet here we are day after day doing everything we can.
Just dumping stuff into the ocean.
Everything.
And using giant nets and scooping up every fucking living thing that gets caught in it. Yeah.
Everything. Those trawlers that are scraping the bottom, all the starfish and skates and coral reefs. It's crazy that we do that.
Meanwhile, I love sushi.
It's the best. Favorite food in the whole world. I know. But we're all hypocrites in that regard.
It's so fucked. There's just so many goddamn people and so much need.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if people were forced to gather their own food and hunt for their own food, and you had like a few months out of the year that all you did was hunt and fish, and then you stored it all and stockpiled it, and we'd have a completely different thought about like where food comes from.
100%.
But the fact that you could just pull in a Jack in the Box, get a burger,
right,
or
eat a piece of cow, no problem.
Fish.
Yeah. It's the connectedness, man. I stand by that. I think I've become more and more of a proponent for it as I get older, but it's just like people need to connect with nature and connect with animals. If they can do that, they can have appreciation. They're more willing to make smart choices. I'm not saying don't eat sushi. I fucking love sushi. It's my favorite food in the whole world. But I still try and make smart choices. Like I try not to get 5 orders of bluefin tuna for the obvious reason that that's typically bluefin tuna that's getting wiped out, right? But it's because I'm connected, because I go diving and I love the ocean and I see those fish. And so I just think people need to connect to nature more.
Yeah, we're very disconnected. It's just such a new thing, too, that human beings live in these massive population centers like Los Angeles and New York, and are so removed from the process of like where their food comes from.
Completely and utterly. To the point that humans are disgusted by it. Like you see these comments online where like, oh my God, how can you cut that fish up? Or how can you fillet that, that deer or clean that elk or whatever? It's like, where the fuck do you think your food's coming from?
Yeah.
And they're disgusted by the process. And yet those are the same people that are going and eating it.
Well, and they're the same people, if they're not eating fish and meat, they don't understand what monocrop agriculture is doing to the earth.
And that's 10 times worse.
It's the worst.
Dude, we went to Borneo. I've never been so heartbroken in my entire life looking at an environment. We went to Borneo to look for this primate species, Miller's grizzled langur. And from the moment...
What are you looking for? You just mumbled that out.
Sorry, the Miller's grizzled langur, called the Dracula monkey. It's a monkey with this big collar. We found it. First one seen in 30 years. We got it on trail camera.
What does that look like?